You mentioned you just published a new course, Engineering Manager Essential. Tell us more a little bit. How do you come up with this course itself? You mentioned that many people asking about it. Is it in the tech industry these days that people having very short amount of resources available to be a good engineering manager? Or maybe tell us more a little bit. What kind of problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like the technical lead role, the engineering manager role, I would say, is relatively new to our industry. Probably over the last, say, 10 years, that name and title has become a lot more popular. Before that, you might have had things like team leader or delivery manager, depending on if you're in a project or a consulting type of world. Line manager or people manager is another type of title that comes through. But this engineering manager role has sort of surfaced over the last, I guess, decade. With anything that's new, I think everyone always struggles to answer the question of what is expected of me in this particular role. The wonderful blurriness that comes along with any sort of role and people who've not done it before. I've been studying this over the last 5 years to try to explore what does this mean? How do organizations support engineering managers or maybe not support engineering managers, depending on the type of company? And also, how does it differ from perhaps other technical leadership roles in general? I've been running the course for technical leaders who may or may not be doing, say, people management. And sometimes there's some overlap and sometimes there's not. I really wanted to provide some complementary training for engineering managers to help them answer this question around what might be expected of me. How do I know I'm doing a really great job? How do I prepare for this, particularly if I'm thinking about maybe stepping into this engineering management role? So that's kind of the intent behind the training, which is really to provide support to relatively either new people or people who are considering stepping into this role in the future. So they have some opportunity to actually prepare and practice some of the skills before they find themselves in that engineering manager role.
So you mentioned that people are not clear what is expected of them. Maybe if you can give a little bit of clarity, what is the definition of engineering manager role and what kind of job scope or responsibilities that they should care about?
So I'm going to start with a typical consultant answer if it depends. But one of the articles I have on my blog was talking about 5 different archetypes of being an engineering manager. I think the role scope does depend because it kind of also relates to an organization, if they have other roles there, also in terms of timing. So sometimes teams lose a particular role, so the shape of your role splits. And then there's also just general expectations and associations with what do they mean. So concretely, one of the archetypes that I talk about is like the tech lead engineering manager archetype. This is kind of combining the technical leadership role with the people and team leadership management responsibilities. So you're kind of merging those two things into the same role and therefore person. Not every company has this. So sometimes you have the pair. So sometimes you have an engineering manager and a tech lead who are expected to partner with each other. One is focused perhaps around the team and delivery and people management side. And then the other side is really focused on technical leadership in terms of making sure that the team is using good up-to-date technology, paying down technical debt, choosing good architectural design patterns to meet and accomplish whatever business system that they're trying to build. That's one type of archetype. So the tech lead engineering manager, where it's in one. And then if you split them, then that engineering manager starts to look a little bit more like what I call the team lead engineering manager, where they can focus a little bit more on the people management, working as a team, because they have somebody they can partner with. So somebody where they don't necessarily need to be the expert technologist on that particular team as such. There's 5 different types of archetypes. I won't go into all of them. But another one, which I think is very useful because I know a lot of technologists will find themselves in this place, is companies who tend to do a little bit more project-centered work. So either in an enterprise where people run projects, or if you work for consultancy where you're working for external clients and you're effectively not really a product team, or you're an extension to somebody else's product team, but you're there for a project, a certain amount of time to help a product team achieve a certain type of goal. The engineering manager isn't necessarily always responsible for the people. They're a little bit more focused on the delivery to make sure that client expectations are met, that the team is productive, connected in with whatever client or customer that they're sort of engaging with, and to make sure that things are smooth, because you're often working with 2 different organizational cultures, one which is your consulting or contracting type of culture, but then obviously you have to adapt and work smoothly with the client organization processes, you might call it bureaucracy or other type of cultural things to make sure that you work smoothly as a single unified team.
Thanks for sharing these 5 archetypes. So I think for people who want to refer more, you can check it out in Pat's blog. No wonder that people are sometimes not clear, right? Because there are so many variants of the engineering
Yes.
manager role. The responsibilities can be quite different as well. You mentioned just now, maybe one is more project driven, one is a mix of both technical and people management, one is predominantly team or people management. You mentioned a lot of times about tech lead in this conversation so far. For people who may not have heard our first episode, maybe can you give us a little bit of a brief description? What is a tech lead and how should it be different with the engineering manager role?
If you split them, let's say you have a tech lead plus a team lead engineering manager archetype, then classically I would be thinking that the tech lead role probably isn't going to be doing people or line management. Some of the other responsibilities for a tech lead are effectively about aligning and guiding the team around the technical direction to make sure they're all working in the same direction. So this means that they understand what the system architecture that they're building is working towards, to make sure that the team are using good tools and paying back technical debt so they can continue to evolve that sort of system. The tech lead in that sort of scenario tends to be a lot more hands-on as such. So you need to be able to understand and mitigate technical risk. And that's kind of impossible to do if you're like literally not looking at any code that people are producing. So the tech lead tends to be a little bit more hands-on and probably a lot more aware in terms of industry trends, in terms of tools, libraries, frameworks, and development practices. The engineering manager in that sort of role can effectively delegate or partner with the tech lead, and they don't have to be as hands-on as a result. So that's one of those interesting debates that everyone always asks about. How technical should an engineering manager be? Like how hands-on? Well, once again, it depends. If you have a tech lead, that means that the engineering manager can be less hands-off because they have somebody who is guiding and making sure that people are making good decisions, to make sure that technical decisions are tie-break through that tech lead. But if you don't have that tech lead role, that kind of gets absorbed by the engineering manager. And so you do need somebody to do that, and they're playing both hats from that perspective.